Blessed good morning to all. It's as usual a joy to be with you beginning a new week. This is going to be an interesting couple of weeks for me as I might be on the road to Fairmount, and I look forward wherever I get opportunity to sharing some thoughts with you as we continue our journeys together. We are in the week of the third Sunday after the Epiphany, and you may remember that this whole season of Epiphany is really the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And last week we would have looked at the idea of being called out, worked out, and sent out. And in a sense, the theme from last week can continue into this week, as it's important for us to really pay attention to that notion of being called out and to understand not only what it means, but how do we support that sense of being called out. It's a very important aspect of our journey, and so it's important for us to have a good sense as to how we deal with that and how we strengthen it and build on it. So we continue to journey with our Lord during the season of Epiphany as He begins His work, as He pulls various aspects of His work together in order that He may be able to move forward with this glorious work. So I invite us now to take a few moments and let us use this opportunity to come before God in the stillness of the moment. So coming into a time of meditation, I want us to begin by just acknowledging the day, acknowledging that we are alive, acknowledging the presence of each other, and just breathe in deeply for a few breaths, just to ground ourselves in this moment, in this time, in this awareness, recognizing how busy we can be in our world, how things can overwhelm us and cause us to lose perspective, lose our sense of direction, lose our sense of purpose. And so we want to use these moments to just ground ourselves. In some practices, we imagine a beam of light coming down into our heads and bringing a sense of relaxation to every aspect of our body, flowing down all the way through our heads, through our throats, coming into our chest cavity and bringing a true sense of relaxation and peace, filling our heart space with radiant light, releasing all muscles, all tension, and just generally being at peace, being perfectly at peace. exploring the stillness, exploring this time of just being here, allowing that light to continue to go down into our legs, into our knees, until it reaches the soles of our feet. And just imagine cords of light just entwining itself and going now down into the earth, way down into the core of the earth, grounding us into the earth, reminding us of our connection with everything that is around us, that we're not separate, but that we belong to this greater whole. Just allow yourself to just rest in that state of peace for a few moments. Just acknowledging that sense of stillness within you. In the midst of all the noise or the interruptions, just feel that place of quiet, peace, and allow it to anchor you into this moment. My worship is a blue sky and 10,000 crickets in the deep wet hay of the field. My vow is the silence under their song. Words from Thomas Merton's Book of Hours. He writes the psalm, the forms and individual characters of living and growing things, of inanimate beings, of animals and flowers and all nature, constitute their holiness in the sight of God. The inscape is their sanctity. It is the imprint of His wisdom and His reality in them. The special clumsy beauty of this particular colt on this day, in this field, under these clouds, is a holiness consecrated to God by His own creative wisdom, and it declares the glory of God. The pale flowers of the dogwood outside this window are saints. The little yellow flowers that nobody notices on the edge of that road are saints, looking up into the face of God. This leaf has its own texture and its own pattern of veins and its own holy scape. And the bass and trout, hiding in deep pools of the river, are canonized by their beauty and their strength. The lakes hidden among the hills are saints. And the sea too is a saint who praises God without interruption in their majestic dance. Thomas Merton shares this reading. When I speak of the contemplative life, I do not mean the institutional cloistered life, the organized life of prayer. I'm talking about a special dimension of inner discipline and experience, a certain integrity and fullness of personal development, which are not compatible with a purely external, alienated, busy existence. This does not mean that They are incompatible with action, with creative work, with dedicated love. On the contrary, these all go together. A certain depth of discipline, experience is a necessary ground for fruitful action. Without a more profound human understanding derived from exploration of the inner ground of human existence, love will tend to be superficial and deceptive. Traditionally, the ideas of prayer, meditation, and contemplation have been associated with this deepening of one's personal life and this expansion of the capacity to understand and to serve others. That's the end of that text. Merton seeks to help us to understand the place for contemplation in our lives. He seeks to help us to recognize that there is a need for us all to find that inner self, that inner dimension of ourselves. It's something that has been explored through millennia in various cultures. It is this looking into the inner scape, the inner being, that has enabled humanity through the ages to discern some very important truths about our existence. And it's not difficult. It is really quite easy. But it requires a discipline. And Merton quite rightly points out that we're not talking about that institutional effort. We're not seeking to make persons monks or nuns. But what we're seeking to do is help persons make that connection in the other direction. We know how to connect with the outside world. We know what we need to be able to get through the world. We know the ways of the world. And some of us make it and some of us don't. But we all, to some degree, know the ways of the world. Whether we are willing to make the effort to dedicate ourselves to moving into the ways of the world and being successful, well, that's another thing. But generally speaking, we all know the ways of the world because we're constantly being taught it. Every moment of every day, we are bombarded by the methodology of the world. And oftentimes we catch ourselves saying that, well, this is how the world works. And even though we may recognize that it's not in the best interests of the majority, we know this is how the world works. And because we're dealing with the external, in the sense of the external, we are more concerned with the self than with the whole. And so, in saying that this is how the world works, we are also trying our best to make sure that we don't get lost in it. That we put to good use that which we have discerned as to how the world works, so that we and those connected to ourselves can make it through. So that's fine. It's fine to that degree. But what of the other connection on the other side? How do we deal with that connection? Western society has tended to be really one-sided. It's like you you anchor a boat on one end, but you leave the other end untethered. When you do that, the waves will beat against the boat and will turn it around and perhaps damage the boat because of the free end. Humanity needs to be anchored on both sides, our external side and our internal side. Many of us run into great challenges in our midlives because we've spent all of our life anchoring the external side, and we've paid so little attention to the internal. And even if we are religious, oftentimes that religious observance is more external than it is internal. It's more about our membership than it is about our discipleship. It is more about our doing than it is about our being. And so we actually use that which is intended to help us to go within. We use it for external purposes, to buttress the external. And so there's a significant busyness even in our church membership. But there isn't a lot of work being done on our internal anchoring, on our beingness. And this, I believe, is what Merton is seeking to offer us to reflect on. How are we as it relates to the internal dimension of this work, of this existence? Our contemplation and our meditation, two aspects of the same thing, intended to assist us in providing that second anchorage to go within and to learn how the world within works. Even modern science today is drifting away from the Newtonian world, the world of objects, and the world of impenetrable matter. And the world of science is beginning to explore the other side, a complementary side, a side where there's nothing that's solid, there's nothing that's separate, everything is connected. And when science begins to speak like this, science is actually speaking the language of faith, the language of the inner world. But so many of us are so removed from that kind of science. And perhaps it might take generations for that kind of science to become a part of ourselves. We have not even gotten into the textbooks as yet. In our schools, we are still looking at objects in separation. But nonetheless, it's there before us, the call out to go within, being called away from what we have known, and in some way exploring that which we have not seen or have not yet been exposed to. And this is important. And so I trust that as this day unfolds and as we begin yet another day in our lives, that we would give some thought to meditation and contemplation. We'd give some thought to the balance. Life is always about balance. The two sides of the same coin, the yin and the yang, the balance. Being able to have some degree of balance in our lives. Yes, we've gotten the external down pat. Yes, we figure out how to do most of the doing. Can we spend some time exploring the being, exploring the wholeness that is to be found in the being? Can we do that? Can we do that in order that we may grow and become more of what God intended us to be? I pray we can. And I look forward toward doing this as a human family.